Dun, 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 dun. We got audio and we're getting ready to go live. I'm going to turn the sound down on that. And if there is a question during the show, we will be able to see it on my little phone. All right. It's 4 o'clock. So, welcome to All Things Bigfoot on my Facebook page. And from the J. Michael Show, we have a guest tonight. His name is Sean Forker, and he is going to be on in just a second. I got some technical stuff to do here now. Let's say hello to Sean Forker. Hey, Sean.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
Man, I am doing good. I'm doing good. We're going to be talking all things Bigfoot. And if anyone has a question that they want Sean to answer or me to answer or anything of that nature, just drop it in the comments. I got my phone here monitoring. There may be a delay, but I should be able to see it, and we'll be good, and we'll answer questions. But we're going to talk all things Bigfoot. Yeah. So a quick first question for you, Sean. Is there anything new happening in the Bigfoot community? Anything like videos or some evidence that's come forward recently?
Well, video, Jay, is so subjective,
You're right.
right? And I don't know if we're ever going to be at that point where it's going to have to be pretty remarkable for it to be taken,
Right.
quite seriously. I think these recent footprints that Eric Altman and Tom Mihawk and the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society casted in Blair County, Pennsylvania,
Mm-hmm.
I think they're pretty significant. Those are the best prints, Jay, that have come out of Pennsylvania ever. And I can say that being one of the more longer tenured researchers in the state. Eric followed the protocol that
Mm-hmm.
I would want to follow 100% when trying to collect any evidence. He documented it before they casted. I believe there were 5 prints. They were able to cast 3 of them. There's diversity in the prints. They're not cookie cutter. They're very interesting. Dr. Meldrum looked at them and gave them high marks. Cliff Barrickman looked at them and gave them high marks. I think that because they came out of Pennsylvania, maybe I'm a little biased, but in terms of evidence, like in the last 10 years, that's probably some of the best stuff I've seen.
Wow. Wow. And I don't know if you maybe have it there on your computer, but can you screen share and show us a picture of these footprints that came out of Pennsylvania? And
Yeah,
while you're
give me
at
one
it,
second.
tell us the background of it, how they were discovered. And Eric Altman, very good friend, a great guy, and I trust him implicitly. If he says these are Bigfoot footprints, they most likely are. I mean, or he's being fooled.
Right.
But
Well, Eric's my mentor. So again, like I've learned a lot from Eric. Everything that he's taught, I've absorbed. And like I said, what makes this so remarkable? Well, whilst I try to find this, Jay, the sighting was well, not the sighting. The footprints were found by some hunters out in Blair County. They sent an email out. Eric received the email. He contacted the witnesses, and I believe within 24 to 48 hours of that response of that email, they were out there to cast these photographs. And because it had rained, they were able to get. Let me share this with you now.
sure, we'd love
Let's
to
see
see them.
here. Oh, it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh gosh. Well, let me see if there's something
Do you
I
want me to
can.
send them to you in Messenger quick?
Uh, no, that would take too
Okay.
long. Let me see. Where do I go and allow you to screen share? I don't. I'm not that
Probably
familiar with Zoom.
me either because I use something different. But
Oh,
um,
moving my mouse around you here. I don't share screen. Let's see. Multiple participants can share simultaneously. There you go.
that
That
should
should
be
do
it.
it.
Okay. Let me hit.
Live
There we go.
TV, folks. We figure it out
And
as we go along.
right
Uh huh.
now, where did I put it? Here it
Yeah.
goes. share that tab.
Oh, hey, there we go. There's something that says Facebook. It's gigantic on the screen. There you go.
And
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
Those are huge.
they are. They're 15, I believe 15 to 16 inches long, about 5, 6 inches wide. So, again, you go to things like proportions that make sense.
Right.
Those are proportions that make sense. And uh, there were three casts. Those two were the best of them. And they came from a trackway. It was a muddy area. And in Pennsylvania, the soil's not really conducive to getting footprints. It's
Mm-hmm.
very stony, rocky soil. And this was captured in mud, and they were able to get these great prints from that substrate. Tom's wife works at a dentist's office.
Mm-hmm.
She was able to get them access to dental stone. So those aren't plaster casts; those are dental stone. So they're far more durable,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe it's even a better substrate to get detail from. So I mean, again, when you talk about a quality of things you can use to get good prints,
Uh-huh.
everything you could do to get and collect evidence, Jay, they did right.
Uh-huh.
And that's the result of it.
The chain of evidence is always so important. And
Absolutely.
based on the size of those footprints, do you have an idea of about what this thing would have weighed?
I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get a chance to talk to Dr. Meldrum that weekend. If I had to guess, Jay, I would say nothing less than probably 600 pounds, if I had to guess. It's a big creature.
That's a big creature.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that left, I think it was like 2 inches deep. I think those casts are thick as well, by the way.
Yeah.
They're big print. I mean, in this, it was immense. And some of the idiosyncrasies of the cast, they talk about how the edges are too flat, and some of the critics, well, as Cliff was saying, when you get that deep of an impression, that soil is going to rise
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to lift vertically. So that's where some of that, vertical sides of the print comes from, where you would maybe expect it to be a little bit more tapered,
Mm-hmm.
to be a foot. That vertical lift is a result of the suction coming from the mud, not of anything like stamping through it, it would indicate a cutout.
Do you know if there was a track wave of several, or was it just these pictures?
I believe there were 5 prints
Mm.
through this muddy area that they were able to get this level of detail. I'm sure if they would have, there may have been more. I don't know if it was photographed. I do know that these prints, and again, it's Eric's story and Eric's report, and he'll put a full blast out on it once the particulars come to light. But when you talk about a 48-hour response, Jay, and that's what you get, and you have all that documenting evidence to support it, it doesn't get much better than that unless we had a real body. Like that's exactly what you want people to do when evidence comes to light.
Okay, you can take that picture off now and come back to you. But I also wanted to ask about everyone that was involved in this, and of course, you said that this has been well documented. I mean, they documented every step they took to get these prints,
Right.
which is very important for science. But tell me all the people that were involved and the area specifically where these tracks were found.
So I don't know everybody that was involved besides Tom and Eric. Like I know the principles of this, but the area is in southwestern Pennsylvania. It's in a very remote area. Like you're not going to get there without really knowing where the hell you're going.
Mhm.
Like you have to know. It's not something anybody's going to go out and hoax. Like these folks were there on property that they hunt. Like so they know. Probably not very many people besides these hunters and now our investigators know where this is at.
So was this like private land or public land?
I believe I can't answer that fully. I don't know 100%, so I don't want to give you wrong information.
Right. Okay. Well, it's important that if it is on public land, well, anyone could go out there and hoax something.
Right.
If it's on private land, then they would have to have permission, or they, illegally went on to someone's property and did
Right.
this. So it's important to know whether it was public or private. And so what's going on as far as analysis of these prints? You said Dr. Meldrum took a look at it, and
Yep.
so how's that going right now?
Dr. Meldrum took a brief look at them, not under a laboratory setting. He looked at them at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference. Eric brought them to him to look at. He said they look very promising. I know Eric's going to try to get them to Meldrum so he could do more of a proper analysis on these things. But so far, everything we've talked about, all regarding these casts, everything looks very likely leaning towards it was done by a real creature.
Wow, wow. Well, that's important also, that there needs to be some scientific analysis done on these things, determining again how much the creature would probably have weighed, and
Right.
if there's any anomalies or anything unusual in those prints, it needs to be looked at. So it's very, very good that you and Eric and everyone else are making sure that this gets documented the way that it needs to be documented.
Yeah, I mean, and all the respect and kudos go to Eric and Tom for that, because they've done their due diligence. And I've been promoting these because I have that much faith in them because of one who did the investigating.
Mm-hmm.
Eric and I go way back over 20 years. He's somebody I consider to be my mentor.
Mm-hmm.
He's never given me any reason to act with ill intent in any investigation. In fact, you would find from talking with Eric and I both, we tend to be far more skeptical than we do advocating for a lot of these reports and sightings. We go in there with every intention to debunk it.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be able to prove it's not real. So when we do get something real, it's special.
Right.
It's meaningful. And I honestly think, Jay, that's something that's missing from a lot of Bigfoot researchers today is we want it to be real. We want to believe.
Mm-hmm.
The fact of the matter is belief does nothing in terms of evidence.
Right.
It does nothing besides make you feel good. So you can believe all you want, but at the end of the day, until we have something to document, it's all moot, and we need to have that. So when you go in with the right intent, that if you go in with that scientific methodology, that's what makes the difference. Like, you have to be able to be as skeptical as you possibly can, looking at all this evidence. And you asked me like 4 or 5 good questions I didn't have answers to yet, like questions nobody else has asked me yet. And Jay, that is because you have experience in this field.
Right. Right. Well, it's like that poster that says, I want to believe. And I always
Right.
tell people, I don't want to believe. I want to know. And there's
Sure.
a big difference between believing and knowing.
Correct. And cast away anyone's personal experiences aside, I think when you become an experiencer of something, like you've had sightings, I've had sightings,
Mm-hmm.
Jay, like you cast them out. I think at least in my case, I've become a lot more skeptical of what people tell me, because I don't know. There's just, when someone's telling you the truth after you have an encounter, you can feel it. It's almost like
Mhm.
there's some sort of
Mhm.
intrinsic, there's something tangible. We can feel a connection between you and the actual witness when somebody has seen something that they can't explain. Whether it's a Bigfoot or whatever it is, it's unexplainable to them. They can't explain what they saw or experienced. That's different than somebody telling a story.
Right.
And you can tell the difference between that. I get excited when I talk to people who have experiences, because if I get that feeling, that makes it a little bit more credible. I have a pretty good BS meter. I was born with a little bit of an ability to be a little bit more empathic than other people. I really do feel. You can call that paranormal or woo it, whatever. It's guided me very well in life. And you just know when someone's being real with you. And
Exactly.
that's special, man. That's real special. And we need to protect that. And we need to do our best to ensure that those people that are having real unexplained encounters are respected, treated with dignity, and we help elevate them and get them some answers as to what we're looking for, as opposed to these folks that come in and they just want to have a good time at our expense, or they want to feel special and important themselves, because
Right.
that happens too.
Yeah, you have a lot of people that will do something like that just because they want to
Right.
make a name for themselves. Many years ago, I did a documentary on Sasquatch, and I had the good fortune of being able to interview Eric Altman and Dr. Meldrum for that documentary. And I think I also might have had Eric on my old TV show Conundrums.
Yeah.
But he is a fantastic guy. He crosses his T's and dots his I's. I mean, he's not going to put anything out there that he has any doubt about.
Right.
And just credibility, like you were talking about, is so very important in this field. It's very important that we have people like you and like Eric that doesn't just grab a photo, throw it out there, and start expounding whatever they want about it or make up stuff about it, and yet present scientific evidence that this creature is indeed real. You and I
You know,
know it is because we've seen them.
right. And another frustrating point, Jay, is I've gone to conferences and have been having conversations with folks, or folks have come up in the middle of my conversation and have, railed themselves and tied themselves to the person talking to me. And, well, let me tell you the real deal. And they start going in how they've had like 40 encounters with these things. And like, the person that you're talking to just wanted to tell you their story. They didn't want to get involved in any of this. And now they're getting
Mhm.
mugged by the knowers. And the issue I have, none of them have any proof.
You're right.
You think at 40 encounters with this thing, you'd get really good with taking its picture, or you'd be wearing something with Velcro so you could grab it. And, like, that's excessive. And I've been taking lately real umbrage with that again,
Mhm.
because it's just so detrimental to what we do. And when you talk about trying to get the scientific perspective out there, when you look at a show like my show, Sasquatch Experience, shameless plug,
Go
I
for it.
find it to be an entertaining show, right? I
Hmm.
find it. You've been on it several times. We take good care of what we do. We're serious and we still have jokes, so on and so forth. But the science is really important to us.
Exactly.
And we have a show out there. We put it out there. We get a couple thousand listeners, but then you could go out and have another show titled "Bigfoot Snuck in My Bathroom Window," and all of a sudden they get 125,000 views. Like, it makes you frustrated,
Exactly.
because that's what people associate with. It's not because they're getting views. I could care less. I'm glad they're getting some success out of something. It's what you're doing to the research, the actual researcher, that hurts.
Right.
And that's what's detrimental. And we got to push back on that again, man. Like, even to the listener, that maybe if you have a casual interest and you want scary stories, that's great. We can give you scary stories for weeks. We can make them up. We can write them. But this is a science,
Hmm.
and this is about getting closer to a truth that there are still mystery primates, if that's what you believe it to be, inhabiting this planet with us. And it's remarkable. And people are seeing it. And now, even more so at an accelerated rate, Jay, because they're connecting with people through social media that have an honest to God sense of respect and dignity with this subject, that aren't going to mock them. There's that comfort level, and they're coming to us. And
Hmm.
that's wonderful. But it's also, we're at that fulcrum where the balancing point to entertainment may be, and probably has now, really outweighed the scientific aspect of it. And that's a little scary.
It's the same in the UFO field.
Right.
The entertainment is saturated out there. The science is just like a little tiny little dot somewhere. But I wanted to ask you, after all of your years of research into this, and you've done a lot of research into this, what, I know this is subjective, but what is your personal opinion of what Sasquatch is? Primate or what?
So that's a great question, Jay. I believe that what we call Sasquatch, generically called Bigfoot, is a species of undocumented North American great ape.
Mm-hmm.
I say that based upon the plethora of witnesses I've talked to, the experiences I have had, the behaviors that have been reported. I also think that post the 1970s, there's been this surge in wanting to anthropomorphize things to make them more man-like. When you go
Right.
back and read these early accounts, you go back and look at the William Rowe photo that was, not the photo, but the drawing. Coincidentally, that looks a lot like the subject in the Patterson Gimlin film.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a very ape-looking creature. It's not a human-looking creature. The only thing that would give anybody the inkling that it's remotely close to human is the fact that it walked upright.
Right.
That's it. Does walking upright make you human?
Exactly.
There's a
It
lot
doesn't.
more
Well,
caveats to that. And
bonobos can walk upright. Chimpanzees
right,
can walk upright. They don't do it as often. They're usually draggers, but just that it walks upright does not put it in any kind of human genome.
right. And that doesn't mean I'm right. The
Uh-huh.
question you pose is, what do I feel? That's why I feel the way I do. When we factor in all these things, also take for granted, Jay, that a lot of folks that make this human or want this to be human
Uh-huh.
also tend to have another part of that agenda.
Right.
Sometimes there's a religious aspect to it, or sometimes there's it's a lot of things that go into that. And I'm not saying any of that's wrong or that's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not what I believe. And I don't think that's what the evidence shows. Now, we could think maybe perhaps it's some sort of bridging point between man and ape. That would be acceptable. There's fossil records that show that progression of how we've evolved,
Mm-hmm.
but evolution's a scary word to some people as well. So we don't know. Well, so much of this is, I'm getting a little excitable, sorry, but so much of this is all feeling. Like if
Right.
we take our feelings out of this and go by what the data says, what are we left with?
Yeah.
I have my own religious beliefs. I don't put them out there involved in my science because they can coexist with one another. They
Exactly.
really can.
Yes.
There is a bridging point. It's okay.
Uh-huh.
But what we are seeing in the data most of the time indicates we're looking at an upright primate. The behaviors indicate so. And until somebody bags one, Jay, we're never going to know.
Exactly. And I catch a lot of flack because I'm pro kill. I think that if you want to determine exactly what a Bigfoot is, go get a Bigfoot. And going to get one means you might have to shoot it or capture it or something. So you are placing Bigfoot firmly in the category of ape,
I
such
am.
as in the family of chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, gorillas. This is what you believe that Bigfoot is, right?
Right. I do. Now, I also believe, is there a possibility it has had some adaptation over the years? Absolutely. I mean, what we're learning now about evolution is evolution doesn't have to happen over eons or millennia. It can be a lot quicker,
Mm-hmm.
right? And environmental adaptation is still a form of evolution. So, when we look at those things, so much would be answered once we get one. And do you remember back in the days? So I'm going on my 30th year of research,
Mm-hmm.
Jay,
Mm-hmm.
when pro kill and no kill was such a schismatic issue. Like some
Mm-hmm.
people wouldn't talk to you if you were that way. Look at some of those people now and look where they're at in their journey. I think a lot more of us have come into we don't want to kill one, but I'm not going to slap somebody who did.
Right.
Like we have come to terms to accept that we are going to need a body, and
Right.
it's uncomfortable, but we do. Like nothing else will satisfy that. We would say even National Geographic quality documentary footage would happen, but you know what? We've had 60 years to do it, and we haven't.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's me. I'm not necessarily going to be the one going out with a gun to shoot one, but if someone did, and they did produce a body, I would be ecstatic because now you
Me
can put
too.
it on a slab, you can do the biology, you can figure out what its skeletal structure is, you can do x-rays, MRIs all day long, and there is your evidence and your proof. That's the way that I look at it. It's just, if it would be great if we could dig up bones or something like that that proves their existence. But depending on how old the bones are, someone might say, well, there used to be, but there's not now. And I do think that we need either a live one or a dead one so science can say for sure what this thing is. And that's what we need. I agree with you.
There's a lot of, I mean, I think that, some people say, well, that ends the mystery of it. I don't think so. I think it starts adding more questions and adds more depth to what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Will the amateur researcher be as important anymore? No, I really do think that's when science takes over and gets all the glory. But I think some of us still get the fact that we could sit there and say, "Ha, I told you so."
Yeah. It's the I told you so factor. Yeah.
right. But then you look at some of the implications. Do we have to reevaluate the timber industry? Do we have to reevaluate the natural gas and fracking industry? Does the Endangered Species Act come into play? How does this impact us as a
Right.
as a society, economically, culturally, religiously? Like, where does this put all of us? That adds a lot more depth to the subject that we haven't even begun to get into yet, because we can't, because we don't have proof it exists definitively.
Right. And we definitely need that proof. I've often said that the very first person who does shoot or bring in a Sasquatch will be famous. The second person will be infamous, because now you've killed something that is from nature, and it is possibly going extinct. We don't know. You've harmed an animal. PETA is going to just get all involved in it. The People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, and it may turn out that by typing its genome in some way, there are human elements there, and then would it be considered murder? You have a lot of questions there.
I talked to Darby Orcutt from the University of North Carolina at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference. Personal conversation, so I won't get too deep into what we talked about, but he was telling me that from a skin cell we could start unraveling the genome of Sasquatch once we could get. And that's remarkable now, that all it takes is a skin cell. So perhaps we can do it without a body, but there still has to be something to type it to, right? And it's just, we're in this conundrum that we need to have. Maybe we ought to change ourselves to the category of pro kill once, just so we don't start like you said, But I mean, the reality is there does have to be a body, and then it opens up a whole new can of worms and exploration. And it's nonetheless exciting. Still a little sad, but it's still exciting. And over 30 years I've spent on this now, as a kid into a young adult, into an adult researcher. Like, I've been up and down the road. I've spent a lot of time, effort, money into this mystery. I think I want to see an answer to it. Look at some of the people that I held in such high regard, like John Green, never had a Bigfoot sighting.
Yeah.
And spent more, and one of the the four horsemen of Sasquatch, Sasquatchery, never had a sighting. Renee DeHinden, I don't believe, ever had a sighting. Grover Krantz never had a sighting. And these people have dedicated a good portion of their lives and professional, credibility on this subject, and left with no answers. I really don't want that to happen, man. I
exactly.
Don't. Maybe selfish, but I don't want it.
Videos show up now and then. We see these. There was one came out recently, and I posted it on Facebook, or reposted it, and I think you took a look at it. There was a drone shot from high up, looking down in the trees at something walking through the woods. How good is video evidence, and will photographs or video, how does it help to prove this animal is real, or does it at all?
I don't think it ever will, Jay. Some folks say the Patterson-Gimlin film is the best piece of Bigfoot evidence out there. I say it's a good start. I just don't know if it ever, the only thing it does now is just upset people. And we get into the same circular argument we've had over the Patterson-Gimlin film. If you believe it's real, it's real. If you don't, you don't. Like, even sometimes being a skeptic is just as dogmatic as a believer. Like, you can be skeptical to a fault.
Right.
And we need something different. I think the Freeman footage from 92 was really good, that Michael Freeman took at Deduct Springs in Oregon or Washington, one of those places. My brain, it's late in the day, so I've been up early. Is a great piece of footage.
about a year I spent doing research on the Patterson-Gimlin film. I happened to have a high-resolution copy. This was back in the mid 2000s, 2005, 6, something like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
I had this real high resolution copy. It was so good, my computer struggled to just play it, and I was looking at it frame by frame. After a year of looking at the Patterson-Gimlin film, my conclusion was there is absolutely nothing in this film that proves that it's real. But there's absolutely nothing in the film that proves that it's fake. So to me, it was an effort in futility. You can look at that film all day long, and as you said, you either believe that it's real or you believe it's fake, and whatever you believe between you and God, that's it.
Right.
There is no proof in that film anywhere.
I think you have to, though, logically thinking,
Hmm.
if nothing can prove that it's a hoax, don't you have to accept the fact that it's real then? Like,
Hmm.
how many years did we hear John Chambers from Planet of the Apes made this thing? And oh, nope, John Chambers denied it. How many years Philip Morris, the, famous costume maker, said nope, no proof. The only person that is still around is Bob Hieronymus, and he can't get the details of the suit right.
Right.
Like, so there's, again, why is the onus always on us to prove when we're not making claims? We've had some of the best people look at it. I
Hmm.
think who was it? Rick Baker from the Kong movies tried to make a suit and said that he uh it's a man in a costume. Well, why couldn't you make a good one like that? Your King Kong sucked, sir. I mean, your
Exactly.
King Kong looked like a man in a suit. Like, so what makes that suit, or if it was a suit, what makes that suit so special using materials available in the 1960s? What makes that suit so special that it has been able to fool some of the best video analysts and special effects people for 50 years?
Exactly. And, I think that part of it is the way it's walking. Um, it's the gait,
It's not
the way
common.
it's, yeah, it is not a common type stride. And people see that and they automatically say, well, that's got to be something different. It's got to be something real. It's got to be Bigfoot. When it could simply be that whoever was wearing the costume had an unusual walk,
Right.
which the guy that claimed that he was in it did have that kind of walk.
I think he had that kind of walk when it's convenient and trained himself to do it in front of a
Oh,
camera.
uh-huh.
I don't think if I followed Bob Hieronymus around for let's say we followed him around for a year and or even a week, and he didn't know he was being watched.
Right.
It's just like those people do when they're trying to find people, on disability, trying,
Mm-hmm.
eventually someone's going to slip up. And I
Someone's going
think
to
that's what's going to happen.
stand
Right.
up out of the wheelchair and suddenly reveal, oh, wait, they're not disabled at all. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and this is the thing that we have to do as amateur researchers or even scientific researchers is you got to look at not only the evidence being presented, but how that evidence was presented and who presented it. And so
Right.
often it falls to whoever's putting this out there and what kind of reputation they have.
If it wasn't Roger Patterson that gave that took that footage and it was somebody else, would it have been such a big deal? Like in
Mm-hmm.
terms of its acceptability, Roger Patterson had a history.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's unfortunate, and I'm sorry. Unfortunately, the God smiled on Roger one day after all the failed attempts he had at trying to get evidence. It happened, and you know what? For folks that say, "Well, I've been doing it, well, let's 30 years, I don't have that kind of evidence." Yeah, but you know what? Sometimes it's the right place at the right time. I've been out in thunderstorms and haven't been struck by lightning.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean I'm also trying to get struck by lightning either. It just means that it's not happened to me, right? And
Uh-huh.
you're talking about a lightning strike. Let's be honest. Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin got really lucky and struck by lightning that day. That's
Yeah.
No other way to explain it.
Yeah,
And
sometimes you're just the right place, right time. Happen to have a camera, which he did, a 16 millimeter camera. He shot 1 minute of footage. That's probably the most famous 1 minute film footage ever.
and maybe they weren't as rare at that time as we believe them to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I live in Pennsylvania, and I live in a very forested part of the state, and we're starting to get a lot more sighting reports than we ever had before. Is it because people are having more Bigfoot sightings? No. It's because there's somebody up here that they're starting to learn will take them seriously. And so they're more comfortable in sharing that information. And for as much as we dislike shows like Finding Bigfoot or Expedition Bigfoot or whatnot, because to us researchers, they're a little hokey. And, you
Mm-hmm.
know, look, it's a television show, it's produced for entertainment,
It's
nothing more, nothing
entertainment.
less,
Mm-hmm.
right? That has given such a platform for folks to feel comfortable to be able to come out and share an experience with someone. Maybe people that have been sitting on a sighting for 30 years, Jay, they're finally coming out and saying, you know what, Sean, hey, I saw you on this show. You seem to be a guy that really takes this seriously. Do you mind if I tell you this, what happened to me? Please, by all means. And you're talking about lawyers,
Right.
doctors,
Right.
very professional people that have no reason to lie. People that have been hunters all their lives. And if they told this story at their hunting cabin, they'd be laughed at and probably locked out, right?
Yeah.
They have no reason to lie and come forward with these stories. The fact that they now understand maybe there is more to this. And hey, you know what? I'm not crazy. I think we've made great strides. And I think we have to give credit to some of these media sources that have generated that for us. And this, like this part of Pennsylvania now, we're getting more stories because people know there's someone here to listen, and TV has made it a little bit more acceptable. You're not the sideshow anymore.
Right. And, in the 1960s, 70s, very few things came out, but there was always those sun chick documentaries that appeared in the 70s, and I loved every one of them. If one came on, I went to see it because that was fascinating. But back then, if you said I saw Bigfoot, you would be laughed out of your community. And today it's a lot more open. And so you
Right.
are attributing that to a lot of the entertainment shows that are out there on the subject of Bigfoot, correct?
Yeah, good or bad, that's what's done it. I mean, think about this, Jay. When you and I started on this journey, there wasn't a whole lot. There were a handful of books and a handful of documentaries: In Search of, Unsolved Mysteries, Sasquatch Odyssey, I think in '99. Then the next best thing that came out was Sasquatch Legend Meets Science in like 2002.
Right.
Then Monster Quest, but none of that existed before that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to look that as this become more prevalent in social media. There's no small town monster. Seth Breedlove wasn't making documentaries in the 90s. You know, he was in high school.
Uh-huh.
You know, like these outlets didn't exist then
Right.
for these. And now because we consume and we're addicted to a device, and we have 4 of them in front of us right now, right?
Uh-huh.
We always have a device on it. We're now exposed to this information at a rate that's so accelerated. Like imagine how much different we'd be if we had these resources today in the 70s when there was probably a lot more sightings going on.
Yeah. Sean, answer a question for me, if you will. What was the definitive moment that you had when you were younger that really made you passionate about this quest?
Well, I grew up in a family where we talked about this stuff openly all the time. My grandpa always had books like Strange Creatures of the Amazon, Vincent Price Monsters. I have a copy. It's beaten up to hell over on my shelf here in the studio. These are stories I grew up with. All the shows were on: In Search of, Unsolved Mysteries. That was a big part of my childhood. And Bigfoot, when I saw that, it was the Leonard Nimoy narrated In Search of.
Mm-hmm.
That episode really got on. I'm like, man, this is so cool and scary. And then I talk a lot. On a family trip to Virginia Beach, my dad somewhere got a copy of Sasquatch, the Apes Among Us by John Green. I don't know if he picked it up at a little store off the rack or whatnot, and he gave it to me just essentially to get me to stop talking. And I devoured that book on that entire vacation. And now all of a sudden, hey, I live in Pennsylvania. There's a chapter in here called Eastern Action that this stuff's happening in Pennsylvania. This happened in my own backyard.
Right.
What the heck? This is really cool. And that's what started it. Then as I got a little older into my teens, I could go hiking by myself. And then I started, I think 16 or 17, I actually started doing face-to-face witness encounters,
Wow.
witness interviews. Like,
Yeah.
so I was young doing this. And hell, then I met you guys on Pal Talk and on the old Yahoo message groups. And like, I don't think you guys realized I was still a kid at that point in time
I
because I
remember
was
those
just
well.
really bitten by that, man. Like that stuff stuck with me. And so much of me, I love a good story and I love a great mystery. And I just, at the end of my life, I'm going to be a footnote in this story, and I'm okay with that. Like, but the fact
Right.
is, I dedicated a good part of my life to something really cool, not typical. It beats bowling, in my opinion. Like, and I've done something with it. I've gone out, I've researched, I met great people I never would have met in my life had it not been for this topic, and made great friends and gave me confidence to like, and seriously, the confidence it gave me to be able to speak in front of people, talk to people, to back up an opinion, back up what you believe and stand up and defend it. Like it suited me well in my professional life. So it's done a lot for me. And the way I give back is to continue doing these podcasts and create and wait and raise awareness for a subject I firmly believe we need to spend a lot of time for.
So let me ask you this question also. Have you ever seen one yourself?
Yes.
Okay, tell me about it.
It took it took a long time actually for I had some experiences over my research career. I've had some experiences. I had some rock throwing happen to me and Billy Willard in 2005 in
Billy, another great guy.
2006 in Keystone State Forest in Derry Township, Pennsylvania. We were along Gray Station along train tracks, and we had seen some eye shine in the woods, and we started meandering around looking. As we went to leave, we had a rock the size of a softball thrown between us. It was thrown from the woods. If it had
Mm-hmm.
hit one of us, we'd have been in a bad way. Um, I recorded a strange sound in Keystone State Forest, and I think '09. We call it the Keystone Moan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it sounds very bovine esque, but we've never been able to nail it down because I asked Stan Gordon, where's the closest dairy farm to this place? He goes, not nowhere you're going to get a sound like that.
Right.
And there's a part of it where it mimics me, and then it gets really exaggerated and a little silly. So I've never put it out there for anything definitive besides, hey, this is weird. Um, and then in 2012, we had gotten reports at the beginning of January of that year on New Year's Day, New Year's Eve and the New Year's Day, of two different sets of witnesses having a roadside crossing about 45 minutes to an hour apart from one another. One was an Iraqi war vet and very credible. And these folks had never met each other until we set them down together to talk about their encounter months later. But we got out there pretty quickly, did the investigation. And the one thing that was striking to me about this is that each witness described the bottom of the feet as white, like very light colored. And I thought that was strange that both witnesses indicated that as something that was peculiar about what they had seen.
Mm-hmm.
So we had started spending any free moment we had. Either my brother Ray Hendershot and I were out there, or another one of me and one of my research friends were out there, traipsing the woods, having town halls, doing whatever we could to kind of raise awareness of what was going on. Well, we decided that in the fall, we were going to have a little bit of an outing out there. So Eric Altman, Dave Rupert, Ryan Cavaline, Dustin Kinley, Ray Hendershot, and myself all went out earlier that weekend to, kind of set up and get the stuff ready for anybody else who's going to come join us.
Mm-hmm.
Ray, Dustin, and I were going to camp out in this area we called the Meadow overnight. So we went to go get a permit to camp in this spot. Okay. And the thing about it is we went into the DCNR office and, well, we don't know what you're talking about. This spot doesn't, we can take you to it. We know it exists.
Uh-huh.
So they gave us a permit to camp, but they had no idea about this place we wanted to camp at, which that should have been a red flag for us right away that, something strange. But we had set up game cameras. Dave, Ryan, and Eric left for the evening. We had started a fire, got settled in. And about almost 9 o'clock, we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, out of the peripheral, I see something run through the one part of our campsite past me into the woods.
Wow.
Dustin saw it as well. Ray's back was to it, so he did not see it. Simultaneously, Dustin and I stand up and we run to the tree line, and we're both like, "Did you just see that?" I'm like, oh, I saw something, in my periphery. And the way it moved was so fast and graceful. I mean, to this day, I compare it to like a sloth of how it glided through just so quick and graceful. Like it's built for the environment it's in.
Yeah.
So we're like, oh, well, God, this just happened. What's, how do you top that? So like, we're really excited. We need to calm down because we're going to get up early in the morning. We're going to start doing some research at about 4 or 5 a.m. Okay. Because we figured that's the time it's going to get active in this spot. Put the fire out, move the logs off the fire, get into the tent. And all of a sudden we hear something walking around our campsite. Now there's a definitive way something moves on 2 feet as opposed to 4 feet.
Exactly. Right? Yes, you can
and
tell.
I'm sitting there and Ray's asleep. And Dustin, I see his little cell phone light come on, like he's looking at the time. And I'm like, you hear that? He goes, yeah, I hear it. I'm like, what the hell do you think it is? He goes, I don't know. And we hear it walking around. You can hear it kind of walk around our tent. And Dustin and I are like, Dustin's like, I'm going to get out and take a look. And as we're sitting there laying, all of a sudden we start seeing this faint orange glow out from the outside of the tent. And Dustin opens up and here the fire started up again. Well, we took the logs off the fire, Jay.
Okay.
Something had moved the logs back onto the fire. So Dustin goes, I'm getting out. So I'm going to put my boots on. And he yells, hey, Forker, throw me my gun. Well, me not thinking about firearm safety. I literally throw him his gun. As I go to get out of the tent, he goes, look, that same thing that ran through our campsite ran up this little hill next to our tent. And you can hear it just taking off like a bat out of hell, running around the circumference of this meadow that we're camping in. Okay. And all of a sudden I'm like heightened, escalated. I'm scared.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, what the hell's going on here? Like, what's going on? And so I grabbed my phone. I ran to the center of the meadow, which is the only place we could get cell phone service. I called Dave's wife, Carrie, and I said, do you think Dave's still in the area? And she's like, I don't know why. I'm like, something's going on out here. And I'd like him to come in here and either get us or get us the hell out of here because something's here.
Something like surrounding your camp.
We didn't feel like threatened, Jay, but we didn't feel good.
Right.
And so, we're saying, hey, if you're somebody out here messing with us, you're playing a dangerous game. We got a firearm. Identify yourself. This isn't funny. You can get hurt.
Right.
And nothing's responding to what we're doing. You can still hear it moving. And Ray's out at that point, hey guys, what's going on? So we're just kind of sitting there and things subside. Dave and Ryan, about 35 minutes later, come down the campsite and you can see their flashlights coming. What's going on, guys? And we tell them, and they're like, well, this is really cool. Let's see if we could continue this. And we're like, we don't want to continue this. We want to get the heck out of there.
We're
and Dave's
scared.
Like, Dave's like, come on, Sean. We come out here to get evidence. He really great pet. If you ever meet Dave Rupert, he's a man you got to talk to because he's so just a magnificent human being. And his wife is also top notch, fantastic people. And him and Ryan kind of bivouac in the bushes and tell us to get back into the tent. And we're in there for a while. We have a radio and he's like, Sean, nothing's going on. We're going to leave. We'll come back out in the morning with you guys. We got to get out of here, get some sleep. Do you think you can make it out here all night? I guess nothing's going on. Why not? They leave. Things die off. We're lying there for a while. I can't even tell you how long. And all of a sudden, here comes the footprints again, the footsteps again.
Yeah.
We got through that tent like the Kool-Aid man. I don't know how we unzipped it, but got through. But we ran, and this time we were really aggressive with it. Dustin pointed his firearm at it, and I'm like, shoot it, Dustin. Shoot it. And Dustin's like, I can't shoot it. Like, what if it's a person? Like, I don't care. We gave him a warning. And he won't anyhow. He's military trained, but I'm a jerk at this point. Like, I just want this thing to leave us alone.
Yeah.
So Dustin gets this great idea of taking a glow stick and he throws it off into the woods, right? Well, the glow stick's sitting there. All of a sudden, something picks it up.
Oh. Wow.
And as soon as I yelled, "Hey," when it picked it up, you could see it bounce.
Uh-huh.
And then you could hear something sound like it, like a bulldozer. Once again, here it goes around the peripheral of our campsite. I'm like, this won't go away. So we can see it now at this point, stop behind a large tree, and you can kind of see it just watching us, like
Uh-huh.
this figure watching us. And so we just got the great idea of, let's charge this thing. There's three of us here. Ray's a big guy. Ray's about 6'4", goes about 375. Ray's a big fella himself.
Mm-hmm.
And the three of us, let's charge it. And they're like, well, what are we gonna? I'm like, let's just do it.
Yeah.
So we ran and charged it, and it took off. It like a bat out of hell, it took off. Well, we go back into the tent. We're freaking out. Like as soon as daylight hit, man, it started to rain a little bit. There's this really peculiar flash of light that I thought, oh, great. One of the game cams got something, right? This is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as daylight broke, we threw everything into the tote and we hauled ass out of there. We must have made it that 2 miles in 6 minutes, man. I'm not kidding. We hauled out of there. I stopped on the way home. I told my wife, hey, I'm coming home. She's like, well, you're supposed to be gone a couple of days. I said, I'm done with this. I don't want anything to do with this anymore. Like, I'm scared. I don't like something happened to us. I don't want anything to do with this anymore. I'm done. Like, because the fact that we had to get aggressive and charge at it, like, there's just something about that, Jay, that it was like threatening it with violence, yelling at it. Like, if you were a person at some point, you think you'd relent.
Yeah.
Like, but this didn't relent. And it just, until we charged it, it kept coming and kept coming back. And so I got home. I called
something like
Eric.
that happens to you, the hair on the back of your neck stands up. You, like you said, you feel it as well as see it,
right,
or experience what's going on.
The adrenaline didn't subside for days after that. I called Eric Altman and I said, look, Eric, I'm done. I don't want this anymore. I don't want to be involved in this. This is what happened. And I think he was stunned that I had this experience. And because we never, listen, up until that point in time, a handful of things happened. I never expected to have a sighting of something in my life. And I say something because I still don't know definitively what that was.
What Jay. It was, yeah.
But I know that nothing's ever made me felt that way. And just a feeling of helplessness. Like, if that
thing wanted to kill you, it could have.
Easily, hands down, we could have been toast. And I'm glad it didn't escalate. Like, we felt that way. It doesn't mean that's what its intent was, but its curiosity was very threatening to us because it kept coming back. So I called Eric, and I'm talking to Eric, and I'm like, just so you know, you might want to tell Dave or somebody that one of the game cameras out there might have got something because there was a flash. And he goes, Sean, none of those cameras had flashes on them.
Huh.
So that flash of light has always bothered me too. Now, subsequent trips, it took me 4 years to go back out to that location, Jay. 4 years it took me to go back. And we've had that random flash of light out there after that. It's non-localized. I can't tell you what it is. It happens on occasion.
It's kind of like the Marfa lights in Texas that just appear and float around and people see them, right?
Right. And I have no explanation for this light. And, it not being lightning, because there wasn't lightning. It was just bizarre. But that experience, man, like, and I've had other people tell me, well, you might not have experienced a Bigfoot. You might have experienced an ultra-terrestrial. Listen, I don't know what I experienced. All I know is that it scared me and it made me feel away. Like, and the crackerjack of it all is we had a Sony Handycam in our tent with the night vision. And at no point in time did we ever think about going to grab it. All we were concerned with is, I know it sounds so dramatic, was surviving the next X amount of hours to get out of there. Like, it was that threatening to us. And
well, that's happened to me where I actually had a digital camera in my hand, saw something, and it never occurred to me to raise it up and take a picture. I didn't care. I was just too fixated on what I was looking at.
And so many people that I've talked to, even people with guns, how many people we talked to over there, I had and I couldn't shoot. I just couldn't. Like, there's something that happens in that moment. Like, I don't know if it's something genetically passed down from us, from experiences of our ancestors with these things, or that just lock us up and make you freeze. Is it infrasonic? Is it hormonal? Like, or pheromonal? Is there something that interacts with us that genetically we just
We just lock down.
lock up.
Yeah.
Like we
Like
don't
stepping on a
know.
rattlesnake, It's just like, oh my gosh. Well,
Right.
that brings up, you brought up infrasound. There are those who think that they do use infrasound, or and the deficient give us a definition of infrasound, and then we're going to get to wood knocks. But is this is this evidence that they're at least a different kind of creature because they have this capability?
Well, they wouldn't be that far off other mammals that do use infrasound. Tigers use it, elephants use it.
Uh,
Elephants use it to communicate over long distances because it doesn't have the same limitations of higher frequency, right? Like it's lower, it carries deeper. And there's probably a resonance associated with that. I'm no expert by any means, but I'll tell you um, the effects that one gets from infrasound, and the government uses it as non lethal forms of crowd control.
mm-hmm,
The effects of it are very similar to what Bigfoot witnesses experience.
mm-hmm.
And so there, I think there is credence to that. And if you think about it, if it's dependent on things like deer to eat, deer are really quick. We have the natural ability to get it with, not the natural ability, we have the learned ability to get it with firearms.
Right.
What if this thing's natural ability to use it is to use infrasound to stun its prey?
Right. To shock it so that they can get up close
Right.
to it.
Right. And so it makes sense to do that. So I do think that infrasound is a part of this. We just have to find some way, I think, to detect it.
Right. And, wood knocks. I wanted to ask you about this because I've heard knocks in the woods. Do you believe that this is a form of communication that they use? And is there any proof that they actually do knock on things like trees in the woods?
I don't know. I don't know if they use it or if it's something that we've established.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I mean, you didn't hear about these wood knocks and forever.
Right.
They're something that have commonly come up. Stan Gordon says he thinks he might have remember hearing about wood knocks in the 70s, but um, I'm sure it would. If you think about it, it's a great way to communicate. That sound carries distance, like
Uh-huh.
infrasound. It would be able to maybe be their short. Maybe it's their version of the short range radio that we carry, and
Right.
infrasound's probably the
Well,
CB.
that raises another
Like
question: is that if they're capable of infrasound, then why would they do wood knocking? They could simply send
right.
messages to each other
Well,
that way, through
and
infrasound.
maybe the wood knocking is for us to
Right.
stop and stay out, like and we could go into that same thought with things like tree structures and everything else that we've been associated with that we don't have answers for. It's really important that we collect it,
Right.
really important that we catalog it, because as we do start seeing, maybe there's a pattern here that somebody just hasn't picked up yet.
Mm-hmm.
uh, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's still merit to collect and document everything we possibly can, whether it's a feeling, it needs to be documented so we can use it for the greater good.
And that brings up also the idea, which is something of a more recent idea. However, Eric Beckchert and others believed that Bigfoot was some sort of supernatural or paranormal creature and not non-physical completely. What is your take on the paranormal approach to the subject of Bigfoot?
Well, if at some point it leaves physical evidence, it becomes a physical being,
Right.
whether it's in that form, long distance or not, or we have that ability then at least to get some sort of get something from it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah, anything that we don't understand is supernatural, Jay. Like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to mean it's unscientific. Maybe there is the potential that this entity or being has abilities we don't understand or we can't explain now.
Uh-huh.
In 20 years, we unlock that, let's use mind speak. Let's say, we have always heard rumors and second anecdotal of people being psychic or being able to communicate telepathically.
Right.
Uh, but we just haven't been able to prove it or document it yet. That doesn't mean 30 years down the road we won't.
Right.
And
And
that
in your
doesn't make
30
it.
years, in your 30 years or so of studying Bigfoot, how many reports have you ever had, the actual reports come in that associates Bigfoot with UFOs?
Well, we're in Pennsylvania, so that kind of commonplace. I've probably had a handful, though. I don't think I've had more than four or five because
Uh-huh.
I I tend to make it very clear, at least in my early days, where I was much more militant about what I believed,
Mm-hmm.
that they have no place with each other. Right?
Right.
Pennsylvania, unfortunately, has had that correspondence since the 70s that the Bigfoot UFO connection is real, and there's a lot of people in PA that push that agenda. I have no proof either way that says it doesn't. I just don't think there is a correlation. And just because two things are seen in the providence of one another doesn't mean they're associated by any means.
Exactly. I mean, it's something that I've always said is don't put all your mysteries in the same basket.
Right. And it
Because
makes it harder to solve.
when you do that, when you put them all in the same basket and you stir them all up, they get all interchanged with each other, and you lose any chance of determining what any one specifically is.
Right. Think scientific value.
Uh-huh.
Does this have scientific value for me now? If I took this to a scientist, would they study this or would they laugh at me?
Exactly.
That's kind of sadly still the litmus test of what it needs to be. We can still catalog it and document it and have the conversation. But if I had to take this to Dr. Meldrum, what's the probability of Dr.
Who
Meldrum
is an
taking this case
anthropologist, by
seriously?
the way?
Right.
Yeah.
What
What?
would be the seriousness that he would take it?
Yeah, probably not at all. Yeah. Sean, this has been a fascinating conversation. We're about an hour into it, and so I'm going to start getting close to close. But I have enjoyed this all
Oh,
and
me too, man.
hearing your perspective. You are a fantastic guest, and we're definitely going to have to get you back.
Oh, I appreciate that, Jay. It's a passion.
Uh-huh.
It's I've dedicated a good part of my life to this. Like, if you have been in it as long as some of us have, some people have come transitory in and out of this.
Well, yeah,
For
you
the
and I
long
go
haul,
back to at least the late 90s, doing this.
right? It was a different time, and
Hmm.
we've seen the change in the field of study, and so you have to be passionate to stick it out as long as some of us have.
Exactly. Well, let's see. I got to get a little tech thing going on here. And let me, whoops. I'm trying to find where I had that picture. Oh, let's go. Just, here we go. Open. Get this ready. Set it up. I got to step over to the other computer and shut down this live show, but I've really thoroughly enjoyed having you here, Sean. Thank you so much for being my guest.
Well, thank you, my friend. It's a pleasure.
Give me just, I'll be right